All right, let's go ahead and take our Bibles, go to Genesis chapter 13. Kids, go ahead and go to Sunday school. Genesis chapter 13. We are still talking about the life of Lot and his example to us, right, of the worldly Christian. So, see if I can catch up here. There it is. So, we're picking up here in verse number 9. Verse number 9 here. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. If thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And so we already just get everybody's brain kind of in the same space, right? So Abraham and Lot have been together for a while here. They traveled out of the land and into the land together. They've gone down to Egypt. There's been a lot that's gone on here with Abraham and Lot. So, but now they've expanded. They've continued to grow. Some of it probably as a should be on. Check it. It shows it's on, and I think it's plugged. But anyway, so he, some of that probably as a result of Abram lying about Sarai, his wife, right, saying that she was his sister, which is a half truth, about a quarter truth actually. But anyways, and so the king says, "Man, you just about got me in all kinds of trouble with God. Take what you need and go," basically. So obviously some of the riches probably came out of that, but most of it really just because God was blessing him. Sometimes it's hard for us to understand that God blesses even in the midst of our going astray. All right? Sometimes we get this idea in our head that when we're astray, it's nothing but judgment, and when we're with God, then it's nothing but blessings. But the reality is sometimes God has still got His hand on you, even when you've gone astray, right? And so their flocks have grown, and now they're to the point where there's strife. I'm not going to rehash everything, obviously, that I said last week, but I think most of the strife was probably coming from Lot's side, not Abram's. For one thing, because Abram approached Lot, and that's the opposite of what should have happened. Lot should have approached Abram. Because Lot was the lower of the two, right? He was subservient to Abram, so he should have been the one doing the approaching, not Abram doing the approaching. And so anyway, so you see Lot's lack of concern for the family, right? Lot's desire should have been to keep the family together, right? He should have said, "Look, tell me what we need to do. Tell me how to straighten this out. Right? Let's figure this thing out so that we don't have to, so the strife will cease." That is not what Lot did. Abram offers Lot the chance to choose, and Lot seizes it, right? And so Lot's character is revealed in that choice, right? Where he chose to go revealed some things about Lot's life. One is that he was more interested in his own success than in the family's success. Right? He was interested in he was looking out for old number one, right? He wasn't even looking out for his immediate family necessarily. Though maybe you could make a case, I guess, that he was. But he was really looking out for Lot. And that's poor Christianity, right? That's a worldly Christian that's only concerned about themselves. The Christian who says that constantly has to tell you that they have the liberty to do whatever they want to do, despite how it may affect others, is not a good Christian, right? We would not say that's a biblical Christian. We would say that's a worldly Christian, right? We would say they may be saved, but they're sure not on track, right? Just like the parent, right, that says, well, my kid has to make their own choice when it comes to Christianity, right? It's not my fault just because I don't go to church or just because, I'm not faithful or whatever it may be. It's not my fault if my kids are a mess. Well, yes and no, right? Your kid does have to make an individual choice, but your influence plays a part in that, right? And so that's kind of where we find Lot's character is revealed in his choice here. And most of the time, our character is revealed in our choices, which is very hard for us to accept, right? We think that all the problems that we've had in life have all just sprung out of the bushes on us and ambushed us. Man, here we were just going on for God, and all of a sudden this thing just sprang out of the bushes and grabbed us and wrestled us down. But the reality is we chose every path we've been down. Every path you've been down in your life, you've chosen it, and it reveals something about your character. Now, that shouldn't lead you into a place of depression. Should lead you back to confession, though, right? It should lead you back to the cross where you say, thank God, right, that He's rescued me. Right? Thank God that He saved me. Thank God that He died for me. Thank God that I'm not left to my own devices, because if I were, I'd make a mess. And this is where, this is maybe a little opinionated on my part, but I think this is one of those areas where Calvinists are looking for an excuse by saying that everything's the sovereign will of God. Right? Calvinists have this oxymoronic doctrine of the sovereign will of God, where one thing is the sovereign will of God, but then the other is your choice. Right? So if you're saved, all your mistakes, all your sin are the sovereign will of God. Right? He that's the course He set for your life, and right, He knew it all. But if you're lost, it's because you chose it, and now you're going to hell because you chose it. Right? It's oxymoronic, and so. The two things don't fit together, right? And so you can't put that in. It's certainly not biblical doctrine by any stretch of the imagination. The older I get and the longer I'm in ministry, the more I think there's an awful lot. I think Calvin had a lot of heresy. When I was younger, I thought he had a little, and that most of it was pretty good. The older I get, the more I think he had a lot of heresy and just a little bit of good. Right? And so, I'm sure that'll put a bunch of guys that know me, they'll put a knot in their skirt, but I just think that's the reality of it. I don't think Calvin was all good and just a little bit of bad. I think he was a whole lot of bad and just a little bit of good. I think he was writing a systematic theology that would place him at the head of it. And whether that was his goal or whether that just was the outcome, I don't know, but that's certainly what the outcome was. And so, but here's Lot, and Lot puts a high value on the well-being, right, of himself and just his little, right, the way we put it in our modern day, right, is his for and no more. He puts a lot of stock in that. And in this present day and age, there's not a lot of people who put very much value on the family at all, much less their for and no more, right? Most people are just, we live in a very self-centered society and day and age. And it's nothing new, I guess, right? Like, we can't really say this is brand new, never happened before. What a shock! All of a sudden, one day you woke up, and it was 2020, and everybody only cared about themselves. That's not really what happened, right? People have always only kind of cared about themselves, but I think it's become much more evident in our present day and age. Maybe it's more amplified because we have so many ways of expressing how much we love ourselves, right? With social media and these kind of things. And so, but we do live in a day and age where families are abandoned at the drop of a hat by husbands and wives, and right? And it takes place even in Christian circles. The number of Christian young men that I know that that are being influenced by social media masculinity, right, that isn't biblical, is pretty astounding to me. Right, if you go, man, TikTok, Instagram, these places, they're full of guys sitting around talking about what it means to be a man, and virtually none of them know what it means to be, they certainly don't know what it means to biblically be a man, right? And so there's a lot of that, and because of that, I think in this next generation, right, this generation that's coming up right now, that's being influenced by all of that kind of masculinity and that kind of femininity too, right? Because masculinity has now become the counter reaction to the militant feminist movement, right? There's a militant masculinity movement now too that says can't trust any woman. They all sleep around. They'll leave you for the next guy that's got a buck, right? And so that's what young men are being told, and then young women are being told, right? Guys are all dogs, and they're all just trying to exert their authority over you and continue the patriarchy, right? And so you've got these two sides warring with each other, and I don't think we understand the damage that's taking place in the middle. And men should biblically be men, women should biblically be women, and the family is the most important thing. It is still the most important thing. You should be willing to be done wrong to keep your family together. You should be willing to be stabbed in the back to keep your family together. Because the nuclear family is still the foundation of society. And when the nuclear family goes, you mark it down, the society's gone. And you're watching our society crumble because we are not putting any stock in the nuclear family. I am not saying that you should have to put up with your husband being an idiot, or that you should have to put up with your wife, right, being stupid. That's not the point. The point is, as a husband or as a wife, you should be the best version of a biblical man, of a biblical woman that you possibly can be. Quit letting the world influence you when it comes to these things. And so, listen, the family's sitting in the middle, and it's being neglected, and it's not being given any time, just like Lot's family. Here's Lot's family stuck between Lot wanting to be successful and not wanting anybody to tell him what to do, like Abraham, right? And the reason that I say that is because the strife that's taking place between the herdsmen, that has to be the result of what they're hearing come down from above them, right? Because otherwise, Lot would have said what? Shut up, stay in your place, do what you're told, right? But he didn't do that. He allowed the strife to take place, did nothing to address it, and Abram ends up having to be the one that comes and addresses it. And so Lot is only concerned about Lot, and stuck in the middle between success and where Lot's presently at is his family, and they get absolutely massacred as a result of it. Lot's family absolutely goes to pot because of it. And your family will too, if you don't understand that your family is more important than your personal success. The day you said I do, the day that you got married, right, you ceased to be on track for number one. It all became about your spouse. And the day that the two of you decided that you were going to have a child, it ceased to be about you guys and it started to be about them. I disagree with most psychologists, and I disagree with most talk show hosts and stuff like that. But there's a lady that used to be on the radio. I don't know if she still is, named Dr. Laura, and she used to say all the time, "Look, if you get divorced and you got a kid, That's it. You're single till that kid graduates from high school and leaves your house. Because that kid is more important than your personal happiness. The number of people who end up divorced because of their own personal happiness has nothing, most divorces have zero to do with getting stabbed in the back, because in general, most spouses are equally at fault in stabbing each other in the back. Right? Well, he slept with so-and-so, so I slept with so-and-so, so I got even with him. Showed them, yeah, you're a genius. Right? But that's how marriages go. It's exactly how marriages go. Right? He said thus and such, and so I baked a little dog food into his dinner. That'll teach him. That is exactly how marriages go, man. I'm telling you. Right? One spouse, very rarely do you find any marriage in which one spouse is guilty and the other one's completely innocent. In fact, I would say you probably never do. I don't think Lot's wife is innocent in this whole situation. You know why I don't think Lot's wife is innocent in this whole situation? Because she looks back. She wanted Sodom too, just like Lot did. But anyways, so listen, the general idea of our day and age is, if the family gets in the way, cut them off. The amount of advice being given to people, that this is one of my favorite ones, is this one. If they don't call you, don't call them. You'll find out who your real friends are. Well, if they do the same thing, if they got the same advice you got, guess what? Nobody's going to be calling anybody. Not bright. It's as dumb as this statement, right? From my childhood. I'll respect you when you respect me. Well, that's not the way it works, because if that's the way it works, then nobody gets any respect, because we're all waiting for somebody else to respect us. It's a Mexican standoff, man. And so listen. You are a worldly Christian. Let me tell you what Christians do, what we've been known for centuries. We put our families above ourselves. And that has broke down, I think, in evangelical Christianity to a great degree. And we need to be reminded of it. Right? I don't think the Mormons are perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But I've knocked a lot of doors. When I knock on a door, I can almost always tell you whether it's a Mormon house. Just by the attitude of the family, you can tell. Right? Obviously they're cultic in my opinion, right? By every definition of cult, but I don't think they're bad people by any stretch of the imagination, right? But I think that's one thing they've got right. They've got the family right. Their families are more important than they are. And as believers, our families are supposed to be more important than we are. Lot forgot that. He was not concerned about his family. And then you see he's unwanted by the faithful, right? Abram's solution for ending the strife, right, was not to condemn Lot, but to let Lot condemn himself. Right? That's what happens here in verse number 9. You've got the whole land. Take whatever you want. Lot was, by Old Testament definition, right, and by New Testament evidence, Lot was a saved man, right? He was a believer, right, by Old Testament definition, but he was a believer who was filled with personal greed and overcome by personal greed. And listen, when you get overcome by greed, let me tell you what won't happen. You won't find very many good people in your circle of influence. Because greedy good people don't want to be around selfish, greedy people. That's facts. That's why I think that we live in a day and age in which we are very selfish and very greedy because of the rise, the exponential rise of bad actors that are influencing men and women. Right? And by bad actors, I don't mean the ones that show up on your TV screen. We all know they're bad actors, but right? But people who don't act properly. Right? There's individuals out there, right, in today's day and age, like Dan Blitzerin, I think is the guy's name, is one of them, right? He's all over social media talking about how great it is to sleep with 8 or 10 women at night and all this stuff. Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate, all that garbage, right? I don't know whether they're guilty or not guilty of whatever they've been accused of, right? I really don't care, right? But it's amazing to me the number of men who jump on that stuff, right? And some of it's because we've been so pushed into a corner, right, as men, that we've been told, hey, you're not allowed to be masculine, shut up, get more in touch with your feminine side, you need to cry, that kind of stuff. And so whenever we hear somebody come out and say, no, it's okay to be a man, we jump on their side and go, yeah, this guy's on my side. Well, you may not want to be on his side, though, right? But the doctrine of masculinity that's being preached in today's day and age is one of selfishness and greed. All that matters is if you have a lot of money, right? Get a lot of money, you can have whatever you want, right? Including women. That's the doctrine of today's day and age. Which is, by the way, literally exactly what Donald Trump said way back when they pulled that clip of him. That's exactly what he was talking about. He was saying the same thing that these guys are saying today. Right? And that is, if you got enough money, you can do whatever you want because you can get away with it. That's greed. That's selfishness. Right? It's not positive. And I think he's grown, right, from that. I don't think he's that guy anymore. Maybe he is. I have no idea. I don't know him personally. Right? But if he is, that's not acceptable either. We've got to, as Christians, we've got to stop backing people who say 90 things wrong and 10 things right, and acting like we're doing a service for God by doing it, because we're not. What we need to do is turn people back to the book. Right? It's the same. Listen, it's happened in Christianity for a long time. It's happened with our doctrinal beliefs, right? Almost every college book, right, that's used in our Bible colleges, almost every single one of them is written by a Presbyterian. Almost every single one of them. You ever hear guys? Look at the guys that people quote. Almost none of them are Baptist. D.L. Moody, nope. Billy Sunday, nope. Right? Martin Lloyd-Jones. Almost none of them. Right? We go, these guys said one thing right, and we throw it up, man, and we back them. Listen, you couldn't find somebody who had right doctrine that said the same thing? Well, yeah, but nobody would care what that guy said because he wasn't famous. Well, maybe those guys became famous because they said 90 things wrong and only 10 things right. And listen, what we need to get back to the biblical family, right? And as believers, we've got to get out of this world and quit being selfish and self-centered and pleasure-seeking, man, and get back on track for God. Listen, there's nothing worse than being the type of person that good people don't want to be around. And that's what Lot became. Lot became the type of believer that good believers didn't want to be around. Abram didn't want him in the circle, right? Listen, it's a mistake to be accepted by the world, right? It's a mistake to want to be accepted by the world and to not be accepted by those who are walking with God. That's a mistake. And we ought to be careful about that kind of stuff. Right? Here's what Jesus says, right? Jesus says in Matthew 7:23, and then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Listen, that's a big statement. Because you know what it's in response to, right? It's in response to, didn't we do many wonderful works in thy name? We've cast out demons, right? We've cast out devils. Man, we've done all kinds of stuff. All in your name. And he says, I have no clue who you are. What a shameful thing, right? To live your whole life with one foot in the world, one foot in the church house, and end up in hell. Right? So, and listen, that's not to say this, that if you've trusted Jesus Christ as your Savior, that you can lose it. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is this back and forth, this out of balance, right? This self-pleasure, self-seeking world that we live in. Listen, unbelievers can be popular. They can be accepted by the world, right? They're accepted by Sodom. But that's not the acceptance that's going to matter. Whether you're accepted by heaven is going to be the thing that matters. Right? And there's a lot of talk, right? I think there's room for a balanced conversation. I think there's room for a balanced conversation about relevance in the modern church, right? In our modern age in the church. I think there's room for a balanced conversation about being careful that we don't hold so hard to some traditions of men that we end up having no relevance to the present generation. Right? I think there's some room for a balanced conversation there. Right? Like I can get up and I can preach 6 messages on why you shouldn't listen to Elvis Presley, but it's not going to make a difference to anybody, though. Has had a little bit of a resurgence as of late, right? But right, it's not going to have. There's room for a balanced conversation about relevance, right? How we do things in the church and how we reach people. I think there's room for a balanced conversation about that, but you have to be careful in that conversation that you don't end up tipping the balance in favor of being accepted by Sodom instead of sought out by Sodom. Lot was accepted by Sodom, but when the angels showed up at Lot's door, those guys were sought out by Sodom. Why are you here? Right? There's a big difference between those things. And there are some things that have to change, right, within the practice of church. Right? We're not talking about ecclesiology or anything like that, but there are things that need to change within the practice of church, but we need to be careful that the church doesn't start looking like, acting like, and behaving like the world. And I think that has a lot more to do than with wearing a tie on Sunday, as far as looking like the world, acting like the world. Right? Acting like the world has a lot more to do with, it means more than what music do you listen to. Right? So, listen, we need to be careful that we don't tip the scales in the other direction. That's good. We've got 5 minutes. See if I can hit this one. You see Abram's courtesy to Lot here, right? Abraham's conduct is outstanding in this whole situation. The fact that Abraham, who's in charge, gives Lot the opportunity to choose shows you the character of Abraham. Shows you why God chose him. Because he was self-deferential. Let me tell you something. People that self-promote are seldom chosen by God. The individuals that you see on the nightly news, right? Pastor this, pastor that, that's on the nightly news, right? Giving some interview, giving his opinion on Roe versus Wade and the overturning of Roe versus Wade, or giving his opinion on this or that, are seldom the men that God chose. The ones that, the men who end up on what we used to call the circuit, right? Traveling around, preaching here, there, and everywhere, right? I'm not saying that all of them are bad, but I'm telling you, not all of them were chosen by God. A lot of them were chosen by men, and it had a lot to do with the college that they went to or the style that they preached, right? It's a lot more fun to have a guy come in, man, that's inspiring and lights up the stage than it is to have a guy come in that just teaches you the book. It's one of the reasons, by the way, that I'm not big on the whole evangelist thing that modern day Christianity's got. I think evangelism was more like the old circuit riding preachers and a whole lot less like the guy coming in to straighten your church out. For one thing, no evangelist should ever straighten any church out because it's not his church to straighten out. You say, well, yeah, but the preacher had him come in. Well, then the preacher shouldn't be the pastor because he hasn't got the guts to stand up and say what he needs to say then. I think evangelist in Scripture is missionary. It's guys that go out, preach in a city, put together a small group of people and tell them, hey, stick together. I'm going to go find somebody to come back here and build this thing out. I think that's exactly what evangelism was in Scripture. I think that's the reason that you find Paul and Barnabas being supported by the churches. Many of the churches that didn't have a pastor that was full-time or was being paid by the church, but Paul and Barnabas are being paid by the church. Why? Because they were going out to start churches. That pastor could stay there and hold down a job. I said the same thing on Thursday night, right? What's the difference between why is it okay to have a bivocational pastor and it's impossible to have a bivocational missionary? It's because the pastor can stay, hold a steady job, right? Continue to advance through a company, continue to increase his paycheck, right? That way. A missionary, if you change cities every 2 to 3 to 4 years, I'm sorry, you're not moving up in any company. It's just not going to happen, and eventually you're not going to be able to take care of your family. There's a reason for it. You can call it my opinion, and that's fine, but Abram gave up his rights. He had the right, but he let Lot have it. You know what that's called? That's called Christ-like behavior. Christ had the right to send us all to hell, but he still came and died on the cross. You know, you don't always have to exercise your rights. Yeah, well, my wife did thus and such, so I got a right to leave her. My husband did thus and such, so I got a right to leave him. You may have the right, but it still may not be the right thing. Just saying, you don't always have to exercise your rights. Not only that, Abraham gave up his prestige as well. He gave up his position, basically. Right? He wasn't concerned about being honored by Lot. The Bible tells you in Matthew 23:6, and this is talking about the Pharisees, and love the uppermost rooms at feasts and the chief seats in the synagogues. You know who that is? Men not chosen by God. Just telling you. The person who walks in and expects respect, whether that's a husband, a wife, whether that is a pastor, a Sunday school teacher, whoever it is, people who walk around expecting to be appreciated and expecting to be respected are seldom individuals chosen by God. People chosen by God are self-deferential. They will lift you up, not themselves. He gave up his prestige. Not only that, he gave up his material advantages, right? What Lot had was a direct result of Abraham. And Abraham could have sent Lot packing with nothing and got away with it. Absolutely could have done it. You know how I know that? Because Lot ends up in Sodom. There's a fight happens, and Abraham goes and rescues Lot. And you know what happens when he rescues him? Everybody's scared of him from that point on. You know what that tells you? Abraham could have beat Lot down right then and there. Said, you're out of here. Go ahead and try and take anything with you when you leave, bub. But he didn't. You know why? Because sometimes it's better to pay somebody to leave than to pay for them to stay. You're going to pay either way. Better to make a one-time payment and get rid of them. Listen, peace is never free. Abraham was willing to pay the price to obtain peace. Lot wasn't. Lot could have walked away from this thing, but Lot didn't want to pay the price. He didn't want to see what would happen. Lot could have had peace. He could have just taken his herdsmen, right, and left. Gone and done his own thing. Abraham certainly would have given him something, but Lot was scared he was going to lose something by leaving, so he stayed until Abram said, take what you want and leave. You know how many times we as believers, we stay in the wrong place for entirely too long because we're so scared of what it's going to cost us to leave, to take the next step. So we stay until, because, well, might cost me. I might not get everything I want out of it. Yeah, but you might get way further ahead too. Listen, Lot lived his life in fear. That's obvious from the fact that it tells you that he vexed his righteous soul in Sodom. Lived his life in fear. Abraham didn't. As Christians, you don't have to live your life in fear if you're willing to pay the price. If you're not willing to pay the price, you'll live the rest of your life in fear. All right, we're going to dismiss. We'll be back in here in about 10 minutes.